Hey everyone, it's Mithrilda and welcome back to my journey of learning to draw. I've got a big life update. I'm actually working again. Back on that actuarial grind. And that's why the videos will be less frequent and I haven't had the time to be as active online, unfortunately. I've been having trouble balancing my work, commute, homework, and everything else. My last video was actually before my first day of work, and I feel like I haven't had any breathing room since then. I'm not even done with this week's homework yet, but I really wanted to make another video and update you all on the course. Speaking of, let's get into weeks 2 to 3 of Foundation Sketching 1 with Sorie Kim at Brainstorm School. If you haven't seen my previous video, that covers more generally what the class is about, why I signed up for it, and what happened in week 1. Check the card above for a direct link. Now let's get right into week 2. So this continues where week 1 left off with more fundamental knowledge and abstract organics. She gave us a quick overview of lighting and shadows, then we go into surfacing. I'm not really sure if she explained exactly what it was, but we take the textures from week 1 and apply it to a 3D object. I feel like in some ways this made a lot more sense than the texture gradients we did in week 1, because if those textures are just flat on a surface and there's light coming from one direction, like why is there a gradient? If you know what I mean. Like, if it's not wrapping around something, then it should kind of be, about the same amount of light and shadow across the entire gradient. Here, when we're surfacing and we're putting the texture onto an object, and it's actually wrapping around or being on different faces of a cube, then it makes sense that the shadows are different and the lighting is different. And I feel like I understood this a lot more intellectually. However, when my pen actually hit the paper, my brain just stopped computing. And even though I knew that the textures were supposed to be 3D, they're supposed to come up and down in space and catch the light in different ways on the different faces, I was like, oh my god, I can't figure out how to visualize this and draw it. But since it was homework, I made myself finish so I could move on to the other exercises. I was on a deadline after all. And the other benefit of homework is that it gives me permission to stop. I'm definitely of the perfectionist variety, so I feel very tempted to grind something over and over until I get it, or understand it as well as I feel like I need to. The problem with this is that I don't really know what I'm looking for, as I am not the professional art teacher. So being able to listen to somebody else gives me the peace of mind to put this down and call it done, at least for now. Next, we covered form modifications of constructed and organic forms to give us a couple more foundational tools and ways of thinking for future weeks. I struggled so hard with the sphere intersections, and on the first couple, my mind simply could not comprehend what the heck was happening. I looked at so many examples online, I looked at the drawbox samples of form intersections. I even made my engineer boyfriend explain how the geometry worked to me. Then I drew it over and over, and sometimes it looked okay, sometimes it looked very wrong, but then I came back to it the next day and I actually got it to work out. Going from being so frustrated to having things click into place and being able to apply it was such a cool feeling. Then later on, when I saw other people's sphere intersections, I was able to pick out which mistakes they made because I made the same ones, and I could even visualize how I would fix it. So a big theme of this course is isolating one thing to work on at a time. Like this week, we're doing abstract organic objects like rocks and driftwood, where the proportion isn't important to having it look like a rock or a piece of driftwood. Therefore, we're not focusing on the proportion at all, or even really following the reference in particular. What we're looking for is for the perspective to be consistent within the drawing, not matching the perspective of the reference. And we want to simplify the shapes as much as possible while still describing the form, then use our new form modification skills to carve the original object out. I feel like this is a huge departure from what I've been doing in Evolve and stuff, which is copying extremely closely from observation and focusing on the contours and a flattening of the image onto a picture plane and then onto a canvas. I did not like how my homework turned out for these, and I didn't expect much positive feedback when I turned it in. However, she said that my homework looked good, followed the instructions, and the logic made sense. It was a weird feeling because I couldn't see whatever good she saw in what I made, and I kind of felt like she was going too easy on me. But then she gave me some tips on rendering, making gradients and stuff when I asked her some questions, and I also talked about how I felt worried that all I was doing was copying the contours of the reference image and not actually understanding the 3D shapes and abstracting it out into a general case. She said a way to stop yourself from copying things exactly is to try to flip it around or adjust the angle in your drawing such that it doesn't match the reference anymore. Then it makes it harder to copy it exactly since you won't be able to. I was kind of shocked by that advice since I don't feel ready for that at all. So that was week 2. Then in week 3, we started off with a warm-up in class where we had to draw a cube as she rotated it around. Simple enough, right? But as I did it, I realized that while the angles where one corner points out toward you were pretty simple and easy, as the faces flatten out, things got a bit weird, and my drawing took on that cereal box effect, as she describes it, where it looks too shallow to be a cube. Then after this warm-up, Sorie immediately went into explaining what happens to the lines and how the ones that face away from you converge faster as the box rotates and the ones that face the sides converge slower, and how this causes that cereal box effect if you get it wrong. It was awesome how she was able to anticipate what our main problem would be and immediately address it. And now that I knew exactly what to look for, it was so much easier. I also thought it was really cool how she said we could think of the individual faces as pieces of paper flipping around rather than as a whole cube all the time. It reminded me of that old Sinix video about drawing the face and how confused I was at the time that I watched the video. Now I realize that if I had mastered flipping this piece of paper around when I watched that video, it would have been so much easier. I was biting off way more than I could chew by trying to skip steps in the process and not properly isolating the one thing at a time. Side note, Notion is pretty darn powerful. I think I've been using it for over a year now, and I'm still discovering cool new features and tools that it has. For this class, I've just been using it to take notes, but I found out how you can embed these Sketchfab models in here and just use it right on the page, and now I want to set up like a study warm-up tool in here or something. So then we move into our first real subject, plants. I thought these were a really cool subject, and I feel like I learned so much from studying them. So in class, Sorie covered 3 types of plants: group plants, form plants, and sheet plants. Group plants are things like trees and foliage, where there's a lot of small elements that make up a whole, and you have to focus on grouping things together and simplifying, while also putting in enough detail to convey what you want to say. Form plants, I don't really know how to describe form plants, but they are, I guess, made out of shapes, stuff like cactuses and mushrooms and potatoes. And then we have sheet plants, which can be described like pieces of paper, things like flowers with their petals and leaves and stuff like that. Each of these different types of plants has different things we're trying to emphasize, different design decisions that go into a successful sketch, and have different methods of approaching them. Also, I am just now realizing why we did the box rotation thing at the beginning of class. It's because of the sheet plants. She literally even talked about how you could think of the faces as pieces of paper, and I did not connect it until just now. It's really awesome to see her examples when they're tailored specifically for what I'm learning now. When you're trying to self-study and you're looking at stuff on the internet, it's so hard to find things that follow the rules of the program that you're following. Like even when I was taking a drawing class at my old college, different teachers who were teaching Drawing 1 told their students to do different things. Like my teacher told us that we were not allowed to blend out our charcoal for a particular assignment, but in the class next door, they were allowed to blend out their charcoal. Also, I think it's really interesting how she rarely uses smooth lines. Like in this Drawing 1 class that I took, we did a fabric study, and they told us that even though fabric looks really wiggly, you want to try to use as many straight lines as you can to describe it. If you make them all curved, then it won't look right. And so whenever I look at the reference images of picture plants, I see nary a straight line. You know what I mean? They all look super curved and wiggly, but when I see Sorie's drawing, I see that she doesn't make them wiggly. She breaks them down into line segments and emphasizes their curves. And so I saw that and I was like, why don't I try? And then I feel like it really came out better. So being able to learn from somebody like this who's showing me like a more evolved way to see this exercise, after I've already tried it and I can see the difference between my attempt and their attempt, I feel like that's a really good learning experience. I don't think I would have gotten as much out of it if I was just trying to copy the way she drew it without trying it myself first and realizing the points of difference between mine and hers. I feel like the critiques for this homework had a lot to do with design. I always wondered how artists could draw everyday things in such a beautiful way, while when I looked around, everything looked so dull and mundane. The answer? They designed it to be beautiful, like Sorie did with the pitcher plants. She was able to take something that looked ordinary and make it into something beautiful through her choices. So basically, real life and the reference image, they are no excuse for a boring drawing. If an element repeats a couple times, emphasize the most important one and leave the others less detailed. If the texture is repetitive, break it up in an appealing way. Even if a line is solid in the reference, you don't have to draw what you see. In fact, drawing exactly what you see can lead to a worse drawing in the end. It's a bit stressful to have this many choices to make, but it's also empowering knowing that I'm shackled by nothing but my skill and my imagination. And also, different subjects need different techniques, so it's useful to learn all sorts of approaches. Then when you meet something you've never drawn before, you can choose a way of thinking or combine a couple to get the result that you want. Back when I first started learning to draw, I agonized over choosing my method of figure drawing. Do I study Andrew Loomis? What about Proko, Glenn Vilpus, Steve Houston? Do I construct things or do gesture first or anatomy or what? I see people going back and forth arguing for the merits of their particular method, and now I'm starting to realize that people are kind of like plants. Different poses and different people are hard for different reasons, and it's useful to have a whole tool belt for tackling different problems. Just like how a tree can be treated as a group plant from far away using one approach, but then when you get up close, you see it more as a bunch of sheets and you use a different approach. For figure, some techniques are more accurate volumetrically but can be stiff. Other techniques are dynamic but sacrifice proportion. I'm realizing that it's important not only to learn to use these techniques, but also to recognize when each one is appropriate and even combine them in different ways to solve new problems. Therefore, it's fine that no one technique is the holy grail, because you're not really supposed to choose between them anyway. I guess that's my conjecture, at least. I can barely draw a figure, but I feel like this is an intellectual concept that applies. Anyway, I really want to study figure, and I'm considering taking Figure Drawing 1 at Brainstorm next session, but I'm not sure if I really want to do it because I've been so busy with work and juggling these homeworks, and I haven't even been finishing my entire homeworks because I just don't have the time. But I also really want to keep learning, and maybe it's okay if I can't contribute all my time as long as I'm doing something. Overall, I feel like some of my plants were definitely successful drawings, and I'm really happy to feel more comfortable with pen, ink, and especially the brush pen. I feel like it's such a powerful tool. I just need to get more comfortable with it and harness its power for myself. I hope things are going well for you all, and I'll be back soon with another update. Stay safe and healthy out there, everyone, and remember that talent is a myth. Now, get back to work.